97.3 ESPN.com, Sixers insider Michael Kaskey-Blomain, and also our Sixers writer Josh Liddick both join me on the show today. We're going to do a little conversation of the Sixers at the All-Star break, and with 27 games left, we'll get deeper into the Sixers. They're staying in the Eastern Conference and more. So let's bring the gents in here. Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Josh.
And Josh, you there?
I'm there, Josh. Thanks for having us.
So, guys, before we get too deep into this, I want to first start with this. Mike, I'm going to go to you first. What is your biggest takeaway of the Sixers at the All-Star break? And then when Mike's done, Josh, you go ahead.
My biggest takeaway at this point in the season, I think, Josh, is that we're really starting to see, a team kind of gel together, and some of the pieces that have, been being put into place over the past few years during the, the quote unquote process years are starting to, come to fruition. We're finally getting to see a, relatively healthy Joel Embiid that has not been, as limited as he was last year. We're finally getting to see the number one pick from the 2016 draft, Ben Simmons, after missing a season. We're seeing, Dario Saric take a real step forward in his second season. So to me, I think the biggest takeaway so far has really just been the development of the team in general and the individual players that are going to be the cornerstones of the franchise moving forward.
And Josh, let it go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest takeaway for at this point in the season is that they're at 30-25, 5 games over 500, better record than they've had in the last 4 or 5 seasons. It's unbelievable the kind of pace they've been on. And, at the beginning of the season, it didn't really seem like that was the case. They were kind of going revolving around mediocrity as the season went on. And now we have them at 5 games over 500. And they're playing their best basketball of the season. We saw that against Miami this past week to end out the first half of the season, right before the All-Star break, and we saw them play really, really well. I think they're on pace for over 40 games for sure, and I had them at a 41 win total or around there at the beginning of the year. So they are right on track to be better than all of our expectations combined, and they're just playing really good basketball at this point in the season.
Yeah, Josh, it's funny you mentioned the 40. I ran the numbers. They're on track to win about 44 games. That would be the most since 2002, 2003. So, Josh, and we'll get to you, Mike, in a minute. When you think about it, this team, if they're doing better than we expected, is in some ways a lot of the flaws that people pointed out during the season and before the season. Couldn't you argue that some of those flaws were not really flaws, but just a byproduct of this being a young team?
Yeah, I mean, they are a young team, and like Mike alluded to before about them just being able to gel together, they needed that time to kind of figure each other out. And I think when we went into this season, we pretty much decided that, this team is really good. They have really good potential, but we never really allowed them to learn. We never really allowed them to grow together. We only really thought about what could happen at the end. I mean, yeah, flaws are flaws. They have their issues, and like we're seeing right now, they do have problems that need to be fixed. They're not near where we want them to be. They're not contenders yet, but they're playing at a level right now where they are all getting along together. The starters are playing well. Even without Joel Embiid on the floor, they were 2-8 before with him out and not playing, and then they came back and from down 24 and they beat Miami. So they are gelling well together now, but hopefully they can figure out a way to keep that going and keep that longevity going as well.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what Josh said. I think that they started off the season pretty strong after losing their first 3 games. I think that the expectations for this, what is the second youngest team by average age in the entire NBA, I think the expectations got a little bit elevated kind of early on when we kind of saw how good this team could be, rather quickly. Joel and Ben gelled almost right away during the first few weeks of the season in October. And then, once they kind of hit some struggles due to, a plethora of different issues, as, no team is perfect. There's certainly issues. But they came up against what was, an extremely tough schedule against a bunch of veteran teams. They were dealing with injury issues. Joel missed time, JJ missed time. There was keep guys missing time. And then you factor in the fact that, Josh alluded to, it's a young team that is just kind of learning to play together. So I think that, well, there were certainly a few games during, earlier on in the season that I walked away from feeling like, that's too bad. They could have won that game. I feel like each time was a learning experience for that team. And, they've kind of just built upon that now. And now they have, the schedule's kind of turned in their favor where it's, the first half was pretty heavy and top-loaded. The back half, I think they have, if not the easiest, one of the easiest remaining schedules in the league. So, with that experience, they've kind of learned how to weather the storm, if you will, against some of these tougher teams and, come back against some big deficits. I think that's given them, a lot of experience. So the criticism that they received early in the season, well, some of it was legit. I think a lot of it was just a young team kind of working out the kinks and getting used to, not only just playing with each other, but for some of these guys, just playing in the league in general.
Mike, I'm glad you brought that up because, to me, I have been saying for a while that I think people forgot that before this season, Joel Embiid played 31 games in 3 years. Ben Simmons didn't play at all last year, and even when he was at LSU the year before that, he didn't even play in the tournament. His team wasn't good enough to get there, so he missed out on extra playing time there. You could argue that in many ways, this season for Embiid and Simmons is arguably their biggest growing season because neither one of them has played a lot in the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. I mean, Joel is, he's certainly not a rookie, but he's basically he's like an extended rookie. He played 31 games in limited minutes last season. So that's not even half of a regular NBA season. This is the first time, just a couple weeks ago, he played in a back-to-back for the first time. So, I mean, he's still going through stuff that, a rookie or a new player would experience. And obviously the same with Ben. And if you look at other teams around the league, I don't know why. I think that some people just expected success from the Sixers sooner, probably because of how, highly publicized the rebuilding process was. People wanted to see some, immediate gratification, some immediate reaction from the team. But all the teams across the league, I mean, it took the Warriors years to build into what they have now. You had to draft Steph one year, Clay another year, Draymond another year. And it's a process. The Timberwolves now are a team that you saw kind of along the same path as the Sixers. They draft Wiggins, draft Karl Anthony Towns. They kind of underachieved last season where people thought that they would be, a borderline playoff team last year. They don't make it, but they draw interest from some of these guys. They end up getting Jimmy Butler in free agency, and boom, they're a contender right in the West. And that's a similar process that I think the Sixers are looking to follow and that they can follow. So I think that they're certainly making progress and they're definitely on the right path to being, a true contender in the East.
Josh, what are your thoughts on that? Like I said, Embiid, 31 games in 3 years. Ben Simmons, he didn't even play at all last year. And like I said, just as Mike was talking, Embiid, you could argue, is still a raw prospect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I totally agree with that. I think Embiid is definitely a raw prospect, but you're seeing Simmons do things on the court that no other rookie has done before in terms of triple doubles and the way that he plays. I think the big hot topic argument the last couple of days has been comparing Simmons to Donovan Mitchell. I mean, we've seen it over and over and over again in terms of Rookie of the Year. And at the end of the day, I'm not really concerned about the Rookie of the Year award. I'm concerned about Simmons and the way he plays. And he has 6 triple-doubles this season. He's 1 triple-double shy of Magic Johnson's rookie record for triple-doubles, which is unbelievable. And he's 3rd in the NBA in triple-doubles behind Russell Westbrook and LeBron. So, I mean, right there is what you're seeing it. And this is a guy that didn't play last year. He barely played at LSU because he didn't really want to be there anyway. But and then he played, a couple summer league games a couple years ago. And this is a guy that has had no experience in that. And he goes in kind of cold turkey into this season, not really, having that experience and absolutely taking over the game. I think that's a huge testament on his talent. And also on Embiid. I mean, you said extended rookie, that's what he is. But, he's an all-star. He's an all-star starter, which is unreal for the kind of time that he's put in. He started playing basketball as a junior in high school. So, I mean, has only a couple of years of experience, and he's already an all-star. And he even said that at the media today, he said that he wants to be the all-star game MVP. So he's got all these, these highlights, all these things that make him so good, and he's such a big player for this team in such little time to progress.
Focusing on Ben Simmons for a moment, you saw last night, you mentioned the Rookie of the Year, and obviously I agree with you, it's not as important about the Rookie of the Year, but it's definitely a stark contrast last night. You saw Donovan Mitchell, how outside of the dunks and outside of his scoring ability, he doesn't do a ton of other things. Ben Simmons had an impact on every aspect of that game last night. It was the passing. It was the rebounding. It was the fast break. It was I think he had 4 steals last night. Ben Simmons looked like a guy who is more than just a special talent, but he looked far and above the other guys on the court last night in the Rising Stars Challenge in a way, Josh, that you look at him and say, man, and that guy's a rookie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, he does things that no other player can do, and even as a rookie, and even then, he almost got a triple-double last night in the Rising Stars game, and he barely played the minutes that he plays in a regular NBA game. So if you kind of do like a little per 36 kind of thing and put, his numbers in that kind of tank and kind of churn that, you see that his stats are far superior than what he had last night. And he could have got way more points, assists, and rebounds. And that's what he does so well. And he's so good. And he's a guard too. I mean, there's not many. You see Russell Westbrook do it, but for his size and his strength and his ability, and this is just the surface. He's barely striking the surface. Like, he has so much potential of being even better. And it's funny because last year he didn't play because of that foot injury. You could not tell that he had a foot injury because he's not playing like it. He's playing like a guy that's going to play majority of the games for the rest of the season, in the 70s. I think he's only missed a couple games or one game this season. So he's going to keep going and keep going. And, he's going to keep playing like the freak of nature that he is.
Mike, what are your thoughts on Ben Simmons?
Yeah, Josh, I mean, both Joshes, you guys are absolutely right. But the thing is, Ben is, he's just a different breed than these rookies. Like a lot of Donovan Mitchell, for example, he went later in the draft. He's not a guy that was highly hyped. His success is probably coming, maybe not as much of a surprise to him as it is to the rest of people. But some of these rookies coming in, they, not that they don't have confidence in themselves, but they just don't know. Like Ben Simmons is a guy that we've been hearing about, and he's been preparing to be not only just in the NBA, but he's been preparing to be a top pick, a franchise cornerstone for years now. Like he went to LSU to, because he had to, otherwise he would have been in the league. He just seems as though he's kind of been prepared well for this situation. He seems mature, beyond his years. He's a man of few words, in the media sessions, and when he talks to media, he doesn't, he doesn't like boast too much about his own skills, or he doesn't talk too much, but he just has this supreme confidence about him that he knows he belongs. And every time, if you talk to him about the Rookie of the Year race, his answer is always the same. He says he's not concerned with the Rookie of the Year. He's the Rookie of the Year, the other rookies. He's not really paying attention to it. His eyes are focused, and he's focused on the players in the league, the LeBrons, the KDs, because that's where he wants to be. And while that sounds like kind of a cliche sports answer, with Ben, I think it's something that's really genuine. The year that he was out all of last season, he put in, work that went unnoticed. He was in the training complex in Camden, at midnight during the week, a lot of times, first thing in the morning, like throughout the day. When the team wasn't there, he was there for practice. This is like additional work he put in, to put himself in position to make sure that it didn't look like he had a foot injury, and to make sure that he looked, every part of the hype that's kind of been building around him for the past couple of years. So I think that, having last year off might have helped him a little bit, as a lot of the detractors like to point to when they're like, Donovan Mitchell's a quote unquote true rookie, which obviously isn't a real thing. When you play, you're a rookie. But, maybe getting accustomed to the travel and the schedule could have helped him a little bit. But overall, he just appears more poised and more, confident than the regular rookie. And you combine that with skills that are, truly once in a generation, and you get a guy that, just looks head and shoulders above the competition out there.
Talking with Michael Kaskey-Blomain and Josh Liddick here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. We're going to take a quick timeout. We'll be back on the other side. We're going to get into the second half of the season, even though it's only 27 games. But it's still the stretch run for the Sixers, what we are looking forward to during that stretch run. Josh, Mike, and myself will be back on the other side right here on 97.3 ESPN. And be sure to download the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. You can listen to 97.3 everywhere you go. And also on the app, you can catch all the articles posted by Michael Kaskey-Blomain and Josh Liddick there on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. 124 here on Sports Bash Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN. Joining me on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline this hour, Michael Kaskey-Blomain, our 97.3 ESPN.com Sixers insider, along with Josh Liddick, one of our Sixers writers at 97.3 ESPN.com. Guys, let's look ahead to the second half. Well, just post All-Star break. It's not really a second half because there's only 27 games left. But, Josh, I want to start with you first, and we'll switch over to Mike. You know, when you look at the final 27 games, is there an aspect of this team that you want to see cleaned up or tightened up that you believe is going to really help them, not just down the stretch, but when they get to the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, there's 27 games left, and they got to figure out ways to do things better. And I think for me, I would have to say the Sixers bench is probably the one thing that I want to work on the most in terms of getting better and improving. I mean, they're 26th in the NBA right now in points per game and scoring, 27.3 points per game. This is the bench. 30th in the last 10 games, which is dead last, 26.9 points per game. They're 25th in efficiency overall, 35.2. 24th in the last 10 games, 36.4. A little bit better there. In terms of three-point shooting percentage, they're 29th overall with a 32.1%, 12th in overall field goal percentage at 45.6, and they're doing better in their last 10 games, 10th in three-point percentage, 5th in field goal percentage. But their rebounding's middle of the road. They're a little bit better in offensive rebounds than they are defensive rebounds. They're in the middle of the field in assists. And pretty much everywhere else, they're in the middle of the field for everything else. And I think the bench is what is going to need to improve. The one thing that they did get was Marco Bellinelli, and he already showed 17 points in his first game. That's going to improve. The shooting's going to get a little bit better. But those other guys that they're going to need to step up, they're going to need, Rashawn Holmes to play. They're going to need Amir Johnson to step up and play. They're going to need Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot and his limited action to play a little bit better, to shoot a little bit better, because to pick up the slack that the starting lineup is doing. Because this last 27 games, they're playing against some pretty easy teams, quote unquote. And these are going to be the games that they want to win and to improve their playoff positioning, because right now they're only, a couple games out of that fourth seed. So they have a really good chance of increasing their chances of winning a first round playoff series.
Mike, go ahead.
I mean, for me, I think the main thing that I'd like to see is something that I feel like they've already been starting to improve upon over the past few weeks, and that's mainly just been taking care of the ball, especially down the stretch and in the second half. Obviously they've been plagued by turnovers, throughout the entire season. They've been dead last, 30th in the NBA all year. They're at 16.7 a game right now, which is, one full turnover worse than the Lakers, who are 29th with 15.5. And a lot of those losses early in the season that were close games where the Sixers, they had established pretty large leads in the game, and they ended up blowing those leads that were, some of the fans were getting frustrated. A whole lot of that had to do with them just not taking good care of the ball down the stretch. Ben Simmons was a big culprit of that. That's probably, other than the whole shooting, the range issue with Ben, I think his turnovers and his being a little bit loose and carefree with the ball would be just the biggest concern, or the biggest issue I would have with his game so far this season. And not, that's certainly something that's common with rookies. I have no doubt that he'll, get better control of that as he goes forward in his career. But moving forward for these 27 games and going into the playoffs, I think that that's something that they could, not only work on, but that will really help them come the postseason. Teams that take better care of the ball tend to obviously have better success in the playoffs. And I think that, by minimizing the turnovers, they minimize the opportunity to blow leads, and they would probably have a few more wins right now if they had taken better care of the ball early. So, hopefully that's something that they can address moving forward.
Mike, you mentioned the turnovers. The Sixers have the most turnovers per game in the NBA, and the guy who leads the team in most turnovers per game is Joel Embiid. And I've actually heard 3 people tell me this week, and, these are just fans. This is not, quote-unquote basketball experts, but they're fans who watch the game, and they've all said to me, why does Joel Embiid dribble so much? And I try to explain to them, well, first of all, he's still learning the game of basketball, but also he plays on the perimeter a lot, but they still don't want to accept that answer. Is there something that the Sixers can do within the confines of the offensive game plan, or something that Brett Brown can say to Joel to maybe help him be a little bit less careless with the basketball, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. And I think, like Ben, I think that's also something that'll come with time. We touched on how Joel is kind of still a raw player in some regards at this point in his career. And I think, taking better care of the ball is just something that comes with time and experience. I think he'll learn, especially in the post, not to put it on the ground as much, just to keep it, keep the ball up so that it can't be stripped by guards. As far as the dribbling goes, it's definitely tough because, there's definitely certain situations where I think Brett and the Sixers don't necessarily want Joel, trying to break a guy down with the dribble off the perimeter and drive into the paint, because that's when the turnovers happen. But at the same time, his ability to be on the perimeter and take a guy off the dribble is kind of what makes him so unique. So you really don't want to cage him in too much in that regard. You just saw it last night, actually, in the the Rising Stars Challenge. He had a play where he had the ball all the way out on the three-point line, busted out a spin move and finished with a two-handed dunk in the lane. And there's just not a lot of guys in the league, and especially at his size, that can do that. His ability to not only dribble but to shoot from the perimeter is what really makes him so unique. So it's definitely something that he needs to work on. He's at 4 turnovers per game right now, which is, basically just unacceptable for, a career average. If he can cut that in half moving forward, which I think that they'll work on him with. And I think they've already talked to him about picking and choosing his spots. You don't have to always make the big play or always try to, take a guy off the dribble. That combined with him just being a little bit more sure with the ball in the post, I think is, a good recipe for him to cut those turnovers down, this year and moving forward in his career.
Josh, your perspective on that?
In terms of Embiid and his turnovers, I think that he needs to figure out a way to limit those, because they do get into some situations where they do turn the ball over a little bit too much, and we saw that especially late in the game against Miami, where they almost turned the ball over and lost the game and gave the Heat another chance to score and win that game. That was without Embiid. But Embiid does lead the team in turnovers, and that is an issue that they're going to need to figure out. But I think the thing is about him is when he does dribble, he does create isolation. He does create plays where he might go and look at a three, but then he might do his little pump fake. He might either pass it or he's going to drive and get separation from the defender. And there are things when he dribbles that other players that defend him just can't defend, and that's something that is one of his advantages. Yeah, he's going to turn the ball over a little bit more than the average center, but he is going to score the basket more than the average center, and he's going to play a different breed of basketball that other centers can't really do or defend. So you kind of outweigh the positives with the negatives there. Yeah, you want to find a way to have him be more conservative with the basketball and not really turn it over that much. But right now, what you're seeing out of him is an advantage that is just helping his team win.
Guys, look at the Eastern Conference standings as the Sixers head into this 27-game stretch. We know that the 3 at the top, it's the Celtics, the Cavs, and the Raptors. They're in a conversation by themselves. But you look at the rest of the conference, there's not a ton of separation between the teams, not just in the standings, but in terms of what they can do and what they can't do. And I'm going to ask both of you this question, but I'm giving with a caveat. My semi-hot take right now is I think the Wizards are going to fall out of playoff contention and not make the postseason. So that's where I'm coming from when I'm asking this. Where do you have the Sixers standing in the Eastern Conference? Because to me, outside of the top 3, I think the rest of the teams in the East are kind of all clustered together, and they're just small variables to separate them. Josh, you go ahead first.
Yeah, a fair point, Josh. I think that it is very tight, and especially in the top of the Eastern Conference in terms of who can compete and who can't. And I think the Sixers actually have advantages that other teams above them don't have. You said that a hot take would be for Wizards to fall out of playoff contention. I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. Not to the not completely out of playoff contention, but down in the 7 or 8s. Because I do think that, without John Wall, he's going to come back for the playoffs, but I just don't think he's going to be as good of a player as we think that he's going to be, because he has been hurt for majority of this season. But I think the Sixers have a good shot of being either the 4 or the 5, especially because there's only a few games that separate them. But in terms of winning a first round playoff series, it's very possible because I think they have the advantages to go a full, 7-game series or a 6-game series and win games at home because they have a really good home court advantage. And, I like the fact that the Eagles won the Super Bowl, because now this whole thing about Philadelphia winning championships is now taking into effect with the players. They're feeling it. They sell the parade. They want to win. And I think the Sixers have a good shot of beating a lot of these teams. Maybe not, I think they could compete with Toronto just because they've seen them a lot and they played with them a lot. But in terms of like Boston and Cleveland, Cleveland, you can't bet against LeBron. So, I think in those terms, there's a good chance of them getting a higher seed and playing one of those lower teams where I think they have a good chance of beating them.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, Josh, they're in the 7th spot right now. Realistically, I see them moving up to 5 tops. I agree that I think the Wizards could fall back a bit without John Wall for the next 4 or 5 weeks. They've had their up and downs during the season. Ahead of the Sixers directly, the Pacers and the Bucks. I feel as though talent-wise, the Sixers are as good, if not better, than either of those teams. They both have pretty easy schedules coming up for the remainder of the season. In Milwaukee and Indiana. Milwaukee's been playing real well recently. Both the Pacers and the Bucks have gone 7-3 over their last 10. I feel like they could potentially keep pace with where they're at. With the Wizards falling back, that would see the Sixers jumping up a spot. If the Sixers continue to go on a run, maybe 2 spots, they could get up to the 5 seed. But yeah, I feel like at this point, barring, knock on all the wood you guys are near, but barring any, major injury to the key players, I feel like a playoff spot itself, which was, the stated goal for the team and for a lot of the fan base, I think is basically in the bag. I don't see the Sixers dropping out of the playoff picture at this point. 5 games above 500. The only team that's out of the picture right now that could possibly challenge for a spot would be the 9-seed Pistons, who the Sixers have the edge over in the season series. They basically dominated Detroit this year. So I think the good news is that a playoff spot's locked up, and if they continue their winning ways, they could push up to 5 or 6 spot. But to look forward just for like a second, the rosters of these teams on the East, this season is what it is. Going forward after this season, there's not a lot of teams that I think that the Sixers could not compete with. Like, I don't see any reason why starting next year that the Sixers can't be in the conversation of a top 3 team in the East. This year is kind of a feel yourself out year for a lot of the players, as we were kind of talking about before. And I think the fact that they're already 5 games over 500 right now is pretty impressive. But, in a series, I don't think there's a lot of teams in the East right now, the way the Sixers have been playing, that you wouldn't feel at least decent in their chances. And I think that'll, it might take a year to fully develop into a team that can make some real noise in the playoffs. As, teams led by rookies and second-year players don't typically, have tons of playoff success. But I think, they'll get there this year, and they'll build off that, that playoff appearance this year moving forward in the coming seasons.
He's Michael Kaskey-Blomain. Also joining us on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline is Josh Liddick here on 97.3 ESPN. We're going to take a quick timeout. On the other side, we'll dig deeper more into the Sixers and also the NBA as a whole, as we are at the All-Star Weekend break of the season. Joining me on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline is our 97.3 ESPN.com Sixers insider Michael Kaskey-Blomain, along with our Sixers writer Josh Liddick. Guys, we hear a lot of differing opinions about Brett Brown. And I want to ask each of you, and I'll start with you, Mike. Where do you rank Brett Brown among the league's head coaches?
That's a great question, Josh. I mean, I think, I've definitely been a big supporter of Brett's, throughout his tenure with this team. I think the job he's done is, really commendable. I think he does not get enough credit for how difficult it has been for him over 4 years to deal with the constant, roster turnover, lack of, talent on the roster, to put it frankly, and to keep not only to stay positive, but to keep the development of some of the other guys that weren't even playing on a progression forward, to keep Joel, active and motivated during 2 years, to keep Ben, dedicated and on a path. Brett is extremely personable with all the players. They all really like him. He's super personable with the media. He's great to talk to. He'll answer, any question you have, in a very honest manner. And I think, his ability to develop in his relationship with players, I think, is a big reason that the Sixers brought him here. He was head of development with the Spurs in San Antonio under Popovich for a decade. Had a lot to do with those Spurs players, Parker, Ginobili, Duncan, Kawhi, a lot of those guys' development. So I think he was really the perfect fit. And, this is the first year that I think that he could actually be fairly judged on his ability to coach a basketball team. I think the past few years were really about his, as I was talking, his ability to kind of manage relationships, be a PR guy, set some basics in motion. But this is the first year that he has enough talent on this roster to compete pretty much night in and night out with any other team. And I think, the proof is already in the pudding. Obviously, there's growing pains with the young team, turnovers. There's, a couple times where I wonder what he's thinking with as far as a particular lineup or rotation. But in that situation, he's always willing to answer for it after the game if there's questions about it. And I think, he has this team 5 games over 500, one of the top 10 defensive teams in the league, a very potent offense that plays the style of play that's prevalent today. In short, I think he's done an excellent job with this team. And as far as where he ranks in the league, it's a little bit tough to tell because, like I said, I feel like it would be unfair to judge his coaching abilities based on the past seasons. I mean, obviously he's not up there with a Popovich. He's not up there with even a Steve Kerr, who's been doing it for a couple of years. But as far as the younger coaches, the younger crop of guys that aren't, that haven't already established themselves as guys that have won titles, Rick Carlisle, Spoelstra. Outside of those guys, in my mind, Brett's at the top of the pack. Both, his resume, I think, speaks for itself in San Antonio. Popovich gets all the credit, but he'll be the first to tell you that he did not do it alone over the long haul. He has nothing but positive things to say about Brett and, what Brett did for the Spurs during his time there. He's definitely a top 10 coach in my mind. I've never actually put a number on it, but as far as, what he's done for the team, he gets, a ringing endorsement from me, and I think he definitely deserves, a pretty long leash moving forward with his team to see where he could take them.
Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Brett Brown's been pretty good. He's been, he has been an underrated kind of coach just because of the kind of success that he's had this season, but the lack of success he's had in past years. So, there are a lot of people out there that are giving, that want to give Brett Brown the axe, and it's just not justified just because of what he had to work with the last couple seasons, and now that he's 5 games over 500, he's playing a lot, he's coaching a lot better with what he has. So I agree with Mike about the credit that we don't really give, that he doesn't get enough credit. Brett Brown does, and I think that with what he has right now, he's coaching a lot better. I think it is tough to judge of where he is in the field of coaches in the NBA, but I think he's right in the middle of the pack, and he's not towards the bottom like he may have been or perceived to be the last couple of years. He's a good coach, and he is doing a really good job of coaching what he has. He doesn't have a bench, like we said before, to really work with. But with the starters and Ben Simmons' progression and Embiid's progression, he's working really well with them. And, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he coaches a team in the playoffs now that it seems like there's a very, very good shot of the Sixers going to that level.
guys, let's look at the overall picture for the Sixers. First of all, I'll start with you, Josh. Sixers make the playoffs. How far do you think they can go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on who they would play. But like we said earlier about the field, and if they get a higher seed than what they have right now, I think they have a very good shot of getting to the second round. I think they have a good shot of winning a first round playoff series. I don't know how many games that's going to go. I think that still remains to be seen, but I think they have a good shot of getting to that level. I mean, it all depends on, injuries. Is Embiid going to be healthy enough to play, at that point in the season? Is he, he right now he's on a pace to play a lot of games, but, in the 60s, but, are they going to sit him out a couple of games to get to that level? And you don't want him to get hurt for the playoffs. So I think it's all going to depend on the personnel that you have. But, aside from their bench woes, which I think can get better, especially with the addition of Bellinelli in there, I think that, in the veteran presence that they have, I think they have a good shot of winning the games at home in the playoffs and then getting to the second round. I don't see them getting past the semifinals, but I think they have a really good shot of getting to that point, especially if they finish in the middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference.
Mike, your thoughts?
Josh, I would honestly feel comfortable with the Sixers in a 7-game series against any team in the East other than the Raptors or the Cavs this season. Obviously, as Josh said earlier, I don't bet against LeBron James. To me, the Cavs are still coming out of the East this season. Their reign may be coming to an end, but as it stands right now, with the talent around him, especially given the recent trades and how happy LeBron seems to be with, his new teammates and shipping some of that bad vibes out of that Cleveland locker room, I think that was enough to kind of recharge, LeBron and the rest of the guys on that squad to, rally and get back to a fourth consecutive finals. And when it comes to the Raptors, that's a team the Sixers have struggled with, obviously, over the past few years. We finally beat them back in January at home for the first time of the year. But, that's just a veteran team led by veterans, a veteran coach, a team that's been together for years, a team that's been, deep in the playoffs for years in a row. And I think in a series like that against a young Sixers team led by rookies and second-year players and a coach who's never coached in the playoffs, that's just an on-paper loss. And, I would not expect the Sixers to win a series against the Raptors this year. Like I said, moving forward next year and the year after that, I think the Sixers could be potentially the best team in the East for years. But as it stands this year, if they matched up with the Raptors or the Cavs in the playoffs, I think they would lose. Otherwise, I would feel pretty good about their odds in a 7-game series against any team. The past 2 games they played with the Celtics, they've been the far superior team. The game in London, which obviously they ultimately lost, but they – that was one of those collapse games. They were up by 22 or 24 in the second half. They should have been able to hold on to that one. And then they won, a week later in Boston pretty convincingly, albeit the Cavs didn't have Kyrie, or the Celtics didn't have Kyrie. But I think the Sixers, that would be a tougher series. It could potentially go 7 games, but I would feel, decently confident against the Celtics. And then down the rest of the East, I think the Sixers could certainly challenge, if not beat, the Wizards, Pacers, Bucks, Heat, or Pistons in a series. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, all depending on matchups and, where they shake out in the season, I really do think they have a shot to win a first-round series if it's not up against the Cavs or the Raptors. And if they do end up playing against the Cavs or the Raptors in the first round, I think it would still be some solid experience for the young guys to go against, playoff-hardened teams led by veterans that have gone deep into the playoffs before to kind of get their first taste of playoff experience.
All right, guys, I want to have some fun, get some quick picks from you. So tonight, Joel Embiid is participating in the NBA Skills Challenge. His opponents tonight will be Lou Williams, Lauri Markkanen, Al Horford, Buddy Hield, Andre Drummond, Jamal Murray, and Spencer Dinwiddie. Just in case the rest of the world didn't know that Spencer existed, he is in the skills competition tonight. The favorite in Vegas, actually, according to betting odds, is Lou Williams. So I'll start with you, Mike. Are you picking Embiid in the skills competition, or are you picking somebody else in the field, and who?
I mean, of course, the fan in Philadelphia guy, is picking Embiid. I think, especially out of all the big guys, he is definitely the most adept for the skills contest. But my sleeper pick is the guy you just mentioned, the Spencer Dinwiddie, a guy that I don't think tons of people know about, but he has been balling out in Brooklyn over the past season, and he's just a talented guy all around. I could see him looking to really kind of make a name for himself out on the out on that stage this evening.
Josh, your pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think Embiid's definitely the Philly pick, and I think he's going to be really good in it. But I don't know if he's going to win it. We've seen the big man win in the past with Porzingis, and he got hurt, so he's not playing anymore in that. So we're going to see other guys, kind of try to succeed. I like that pick of Spencer Dinwiddie. I might go with Jamal Murray or one of those guys, or Lou Williams to really step up. Lou Williams has been unbelievable all year, but I think it's going to be one of those guards. But Joel Embiid, I think he's going to be really good. I think he's going to get far in that competition. But at the end of the day, I think it is going to come down to a guard.
Yeah, I'm picking Lou Williams just because I think that it's he's basically the guy hosting the weekend. He's the only real representative of either team at the weekend event. So I'm going with him. The NBA Slam Dunk competition obviously doesn't get as much attention as it used to be, but I want to ask you guys: do either of you have a favorite in the dunk competition? Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Gordon would have been my favorite, but he was unable to participate due to injury. So now it's down to 3 guards and a forward, and I think I'm gonna go with Victor Oladipo on this one. I think he's been in a very, very good dunker for a long time, and a couple of years that he's been in the league, and I think that he's going to be really successful in this game and this contest. But I do think that Donovan Mitchell replacing Aaron Gordon. I think Mitchell, who has puts on a show in terms of the dunks that he's provided this season, I think he's going to be a really good dark horse to go up against Oladipo. But any of these guys can win. But I like Oladipo in this one.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to hedge my bets a little bit, Josh, and I'm going to say I think a rookie is going to win. So I think either it's going to be Dennis Smith Jr. or Donovan Mitchell. Judges love the smaller player card, and Dennis is obviously the only guard out of or the only point guard rather out of the crew, the shortest player, and that dude can just throw down in game. I've seen him do tomahawks, windmills, like 2-hand throws over dudes. He is fearless. I'm definitely excited for him, and obviously Donovan Mitchell is a guy whose name has been building a little bit of buzz over the past few weeks, and I think a lot of people will kind of be excited to see what he has to offer. And then Larry Nance is another guy. None of us picked him, but his dad won the first ever dunk contest back in '84 as a member of the Cavaliers. I think he could definitely be motivated to try to follow in his dad's footsteps. And if he throws on an old school jersey of his dad or pulls out one of the dunks that his dad did to win the '84 contest, I could definitely see that swaying the judges a little bit. So I think it's going to be pretty open. All 4 dudes can definitely dunk, and I'm pretty happy the league got guys that are pretty exciting, I think, for the fans to watch.
See, I'm glad because I'm actually going to be picking Larry Nance Jr. tonight because I think his dad's going to give him some tips. I think that's a little advantage in his corner. Guys, we're running out of real estate, so really quick, I need picks from each of you on these. Mike, league MVP is?
James Harden.
Josh.
I'm going to go, James Harden's a good one, but I'm going to go LeBron on this one.
Yeah, I'm going Kyrie. I think what he's done with Boston, can't be underestimated at all. Who is going to be playing in the NBA Finals, Josh?
I'm going to go with the Cavs. I think they're going to pull it out, and I think that it's going to be the Warriors again. I'm going to go Cavs-Warriors.
Mike?
Yeah, I got to agree there, Josh. I think we're going to see the 4th straight Cavs-Warriors.
And one more for you, Mike. How many first-place votes does Ben Simmons get for Rookie of the Year?
Exact number, I don't know. I do think he
just
will
like a percentage.
Win Rookie of the Year. I'll give him 55%. I think he wins. I think he takes home the hardware.
Josh, percentage of first-place votes.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to come down to Simmons winning it, so I think I'm going to go maybe 65%. I think that the writers are going to figure out that he did way more than Mitchell did, so they're going to pick him over Donovan Mitchell.
Guys, I really appreciate you joining me today on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. It's been a lot of fun this hour. Folks, go follow these guys at The Real Mike KB. And Josh, your Twitter is at Josh Liddick, correct?
At Josh Liddick Talk.
Josh Liddick Talk. There we go. All right, guys, appreciate you joining me today. And you know what? It's going to be a fun 27 games to round out the season.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man.